Tonight, federal agents have arrested a trusted government official in a massive $80 million drug network.
At 4:17 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, federal agents initiated the largest coordinated takedown of a compromised government network in American history. The immediate seizure value exceeds $80 million in narcotic, laundered currency, and compromised federal infrastructure. Multiple high-ranking state officials are in federal custody. This is not a standard drug bust. This is a surgical excision of institutional treason that has been metastasizing inside the United States government for 3 years. 4:18 a.m. Port of Los Angeles, California. Population, $3.9 million. Seizure value, $80.4 million in narcotics, cash, and compromised assets. Federal agents deploy 1,420 across 4 states. Federal briefings would later classify this morning's events as the most sophisticated harbor-based infiltration ever uncovered on American soil. But what the public will see on tonight's news, the pallets of cash, the mountains of fentanyl pills, the perp walks of handcuffed officials, represents only the surface of a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of state government. This wasn't smuggling. This was a hostile acquisition of critical federal infrastructure, orchestrated by a sitting governor who transformed the California coast into a fortress for the Sinaloa cartel, turning American ports into cartel highways and federal agencies into unwitting accomplices. If you want to understand how institutional betrayal operates at the highest levels and how a state government was weaponized against its own citizens, the next 6 hours will show you exactly how democracy dies in the shadows. 2:43 a.m. San Pedro Bay Container Terminal, Los Angeles. The Pacific fog rolled in thick and suffocating, carrying the taste of rust, diesel exhaust, and something chemical that didn't belong in the night air. It moved like a living entity between shipping containers stacked 40 feet high, transforming the amber dock lights into dim, ghostly halos that barely penetrated the darkness. The sprawling concrete landscape of Terminal 7 stretched endlessly in all directions, a maze of steel boxes and crane shadows where 18-wheelers sat parked in perfect, ominous rows. The port looked dead. It wasn't. DEA Special Agent Sarah Chen crouched behind a concrete barrier, her breath misting in the cold air as she watched thermal imaging feeds flicker across her tactical display. The green-tinted screen showed 4 heat signatures moving inside container MCU 77438891, their movements frantic and purposeful. Beside her, FBI SWAT team leader Marcus Rodriguez checked his weapon for the 3rd time, muscle memory from 2 decades of high-risk operations. Thermal confirms active processing, Chen whispered into her throat. They're not just storing product, they're cooking it. The manifest for this container read like a bureaucratic lullaby. Agricultural processing equipment from Mazatlan. Destination, Nevada Logistics Center. Contents, industrial pump components and irrigation supplies. Reality was about to prove far more explosive. Intelligence suggested this wasn't just a mobile stash house. It was a floating laboratory, equipped with industrial-grade chemical processing equipment capable of refining precursor chemicals into finished fentanyl without ever touching Mexican soil. The kind of operation that could produce enough poison to kill half of Los Angeles. All units, execute on my mark, came the voice of Special Agent in Charge David Torres through their earpieces. His voice carried the weight of 23 years hunting cartels and the knowledge that everything they'd learned about this network led to one terrifying conclusion. Someone at the highest levels of government was helping. 3, 2, 1. Execute. The night exploded into chaos. Hydraulic breaching charges detonated with a concussive thump that vibrated through the concrete pier. But instead of simply opening, the container doors were blown completely off their hinges, twisted metal screaming as it tore away. Orange flames erupted skyward like a volcanic blast, momentarily turning the fog into a blinding white wall of superheated air. The blast wave hit Chen like a physical blow, driving her backward against the concrete barrier. The explosion wasn't supposed to happen. This was a controlled breach, not a demolition. Chemical reaction, someone screamed over the radio. The precursors are cooking off. Through the flames and smoke, agents could see the interior of the container, a nightmare of industrial chemistry gone wrong. Stainless steel vats had ruptured, spilling their contents across the floor where they mixed and ignited. Ventilation ducts pumped toxic smoke into the night air. And through the chaos, 4 figures in hazmat suits scrambled not for weapons, but for emergency protocols to contain what was essentially a chemical weapon detonating in the heart of America's busiest port. Masks! Everyone on air! Torres commanded, his voice cracking with urgency, as hazmat teams in silver suits descended on Terminal 7 like astronauts landing on a hostile planet. Agent Rodriguez led his team through the smoke, their tactical lights cutting through the chemical haze. Inside the container, they found something that would haunt their dream: an industrial laboratory designed to process enough precursor chemicals to manufacture 6,200 pounds of finished fentanyl, enough poison to flood the entire Southwest for 8 months. But the most terrifying discovery wasn't the chemicals or the industrial equipment. It was a reinforced steel safe welded to the container floor, its contents protected from the chemical explosion by military-grade shielding. Inside, encrypted hard drives, satellite phones with international SIM cards, and a leather-bound ledger that made Chen's blood run cold. The ledger didn't list drug prices. It listed federal inspection schedule, customs officer shift rotations, and Coast Guard patrol routes. At the top of the first page, circled in red ink, was a single entry that changed everything. Governor Authorization Code, Alpha 1, inspection bypass confirmed. Someone at the highest level of California state government had known exactly when this inspection would happen, and they had tried to prevent it. 6:30 a.m., FBI Cybercrime Division, Los Angeles Field Office. The secure facility hummed with the desperate energy of analysts who knew they were racing against time. Senior cyber analyst Jennifer Walsh had been attacking the military-grade encryption on the seized drives for 3 hours, her eyes bloodshot from staring at scrolling lines of code that seemed designed by someone with Pentagon-level security clearance. "This isn't standard cartel encryption," Walsh muttered, fingers flying across her keyboard. "This is NSA-level security. Someone with serious technical resources built this system." The breakthrough came at 6:47 a.m. A password fragment recovered from the damaged laptop matched a sequence buried deep in encrypted drives. "I'm in," Walsh announced, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Decrypting the network architecture now." The main display wall erupted into a spider web of connections that made everyone in the room fall silent. It wasn't a simple drug distribution network. It was a digital nervous system that stretched across the entire West Coast, connecting ports, customs databases, law enforcement agencies, and political offices in a web of corruption that glowed with terrifying complexity. At the center of the web, pulsing like a digital heart, was a user designation that made Supervisory Special Agent Michael Harrison's stomach drop: Governor Alpha 1. "Pull the access logs for that account," Harrison ordered, his voice tight with the realization of what they're seeing. The logs scrolled down the screen in an endless stream of betrayal. Access granted, Port Security Grid 7, Container Inspection Schedule access. Granted, DEA Raid Planning Database, Operation Schedules access. Granted, CBP Shift Roster, San Diego Sector access. Granted, Coast Guard Patrol Routes, Southern California. Administrative privileges across multiple federal databases, Walsh whispered, her face pale in the monitor's glow. "This user has been accessing classified information 3 times a week for 18 months. Every login corresponds to a major cartel shipment." Harrison leaned forward, studying the IP trace. "Where is this coming from?" "Tracing through 7 VPN layers, bouncing off servers in Russia, Brazil, Singapore." Walsh's fingers danced across her keyboard. "Got it. The source IP resolves to 1300 L Street, Sacramento, California." The address hit Harrison like a physical blow. That's the California state capital. Governor Patricia Hawkins' private server. Governor Patricia Hawkins, 54 years old, former federal prosecutor who had built her reputation crushing organized crime in the 1990s. Two-term governor elected on promises to bring the hammer down on cartel scum. The woman who stood at press conferences promising to flood California ports with law enforcement had been secretly providing the Sinaloa cartel with the intelligence they needed to avoid that enforcement. The system revealed the scope of what the cartel called Operation Tideline, a systematic transformation of California's ports into Sinaloa logistics hubs. Governor Hawkins had used executive orders to streamline port operations, which was cover for removing federal oversight. She had redirected National Guard units away from smuggling routes under the guise of budget optimization. She had appointed cartel-friendly officials to port authority boards. She hadn't just opened the door for the cartel, she had built them a superhighway. "This is command-level treason," Harrison said, his voice low and dangerous. "She didn't take bribes to look the other way. She actively engineered the system to serve cartel interests." The digital evidence showed wire transfers totaling $8.9 million flowing from shell corporations in Panama and the Cayman Islands directly into accounts controlled by Governor Hawkins. But the money was just the surface. The communications revealed systematic recruitment of federal officials across multiple agencies, turning badges into commodities and oaths into business transactions. 7:45 a.m. Federal Command Center, Los Angeles. The atmosphere in the command center was electric with controlled fury. On the giant digital map dominating the front wall, 73 red markers pulsed across California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico, like infected wounds on the body of America. Each marker represented a cartel facility, a corrupt official, or a compromised piece of infrastructure tied to Governor Hawkins' network. Operation Harbor Blast goes live in 15 minutes, announced FBI Assistant Director Rebecca Santos, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 2 decades dismantling criminal organizations. We move as one coordinated force. No warnings, no negotiations. We end this network today. The assets assembled for this strike represented the largest coordinated federal law enforcement operation in California history. 420 federal agents across multiple agencies, 68 SWAT teams and tactical units, 12 DEA special response teams, 8 FBI hostage rescue team operators, ICE enforcement and removal operations strike teams, Border Patrol tactical units, BORTAC U.S. Marshals Service fugitive teams overhead, air support circled like digital vultures. 2 Black Hawk helicopters from Customs and Border Protection maintained surveillance patterns over Sacramento. A U.S. Air Force Predator drone loomed at 20,000 feet, its sensors tracking communications and movement patterns. 2 F-15 fighter jets from the California Air National Guard provided air cover, ready to intercept any aircraft attempting to evacuate high-value targets. 12 miles offshore, the USS Zumwalt, a guided missile destroyer, sat silently in the Pacific, its advanced radar systems monitoring every vessel leaving the California coast to ensure no cartel leadership escaped by sea. At 800 hours, we cut the head off this snake, Santos commanded, her eyes scanning the room full of agents who had spent months watching good cases collapse because someone was leaking their plans. Governor Hawkins, her network of corrupted officials, and every cartel asset they've been protecting, they all fall today. At exactly 8 a.m., the order crackled through every radio channel simultaneously. Execute, execute, execute. Target Alpha, Governor's Mansion, Sacramento. The convoy of black armored vehicles screamed through the early morning streets of Sacramento like a mechanized storm. The iron gates of the historic mansion were smashed open by a Bearcat armored vehicle, its reinforced hull designed to punch through barriers exactly like this. SWAT teams in full tactical gear poured out of the vehicle, moving with the fluid precision of water finding its level. Flashbangs shattered the mansion's front windows in explosions of light and sound. The heavy oak doors, installed when California governors feared political assassins rather than federal raids, disintegrated under shaped charges. Federal agents, down! Get down now! They found Governor Hawkins in her private study, frantically typing on a laptop, attempting to initiate a remote wipe of her servers. She wasn't running. She was trying to destroy evidence that could implicate dozens of officials. Step away from the computer. The lead agent's voice cut through the chaos. Hawkins looked up, her face a mask of cold calculation rather than fear. "You have no idea what you're destroying," she said, her voice steady despite the handcuffs being snapped onto her wrists. "The system you think you're protecting died years ago." Simultaneously, the hammer fell across 4 states. In the Mojave Desert, DEA tactical teams descended from helicopters onto a solar energy facility that was actually a methamphetamine super lab capable of producing 500 pounds of product per day. Armed resistance met them with automatic weapons fire from industrial catwalk, but the firefight was brief and decisive. In Long Beach, a warehouse disguised as an automotive parts distributor yielded 480 pounds of methamphetamine and $2.3 million in cash, being processed through money-counting machines. Near the San Ysidro border crossing, ICE agents discovered a tunnel system equipped with rail tracks and ventilation, moving 2 tons of cocaine per week directly under Border Patrol positions. In Phoenix, a logistics consulting office was revealed as a command center coordinating trucking convoys across interstate highways, complete with radios tuned to CBP frequencies and servers mirroring federal surveillance data. The radio traffic in the command center became a symphony of victory. Target Alpha secured, Governor in custody, Superlab neutralized, massive chemical seizure, tunnel system compromised, suspects fleeing into Mexico, financial hub secured, money laundering operation dismantled. By noon, the seizures painted a picture of industrial-scale corruption. 1,340 pounds of methamphetamine, 420 pounds of fentanyl powder, 2.8 million counterfeit prescription pills, 180 pounds of cocaine, 67 pounds of heroin, $18.7 million in cash, and liquid assets, 89 firearms, including military-style weapons. The underworld had taken more damage in 4 hours than in the previous 4 years combined. 2:15 p.m., FBI evidence processing facility. The adrenaline of the raids had faded, replaced by the cold, methodical work of documenting betrayal. In a secure warehouse, investigators surrounded tables covered with the digital entrails of corruption, servers from port authorities, smartphones from police captains, encrypted drives from Border Patrol supervisors. Senior investigator David Chen stared at a decrypted email server belonging to Deputy Port Chief Martin Caldwell, a 20-year veteran who had coached Little League and donated to veteran charities while secretly serving as the Sinaloa cartel's primary intelligence asset. "Look at this payroll," Chen said, sliding a tablet across the table. "It reads like a law enforcement directory." The spreadsheet was a catalog of sold badges. Sergeant Miller, LAPD Harbor Division, 5,000-month Officer Ramirez, CBP Container Inspection, 8,000-month Judge Thompson, State Superior Court, 25,000 case dismissal. Captain Rodriguez, Coast Guard Sector LA, 12,000 patrol modification. The corruption had infected every layer of the justice system. Border Patrol schedules were modified to create smuggling windows. Police patrol grids were falsified to establish blind corridors. Federal raid schedules were leaked weeks in advance, allowing cartel operations to relocate before law enforcement arrived. "I knew Miller," Chen said quietly, staring at his former academy classmate's booking photo. "He sat at my dinner table. My kids called him Uncle Mike." The investigation revealed that Governor Hawkins and her network had constructed a parallel police force, a shadow enforcement system that didn't serve justice, but served profit. They had used federal resources to eliminate cartel competitors, clearing markets for their partners. They had weaponized state surveillance to track DEA agents, monitoring the very people tasked with hunting them. Video files recovered from Caldwell's computer showed uniformed officers accepting envelopes of cash in restaurant back rooms, federal judges laughing while discussing how to bury evidence on procedural technicality, border agents providing real-time updates on patrol positions via encrypted messaging apps. "This is the cancer," Chen said, his voice heavy with the weight of institutional betrayal. "The drugs destroy neighborhoods. This destroys the country." By evening, internal affairs teams were executing arrests across multiple agencies. Federal agents walked into police stations and handcuffed sergeants at their desks. Judges were escorted from their chambers in front of stunned court personnel. CBP officers were arrested at their border posts while on duty. The badge, symbol of public trust, was being surgically cleaned, but the scars would remain for generations. Continental scale, the infrastructure takeover. As forensic analysts pieced together the seized data, a terrifying Continental picture emerged. Governor Hawkins hadn't just corrupted California. She had engineered a transcontinental criminal infrastructure. The network stretched from Pacific ports to distribution hubs in Phoenix, Las Vegas, Denver, Chicago, and Atlanta. They had infiltrated the interstate trucking system using companies with green energy certifications that bypassed normal inspection protocols. They had purchased farmland along major highways using fraudulent agricultural grants, converting legitimate farms into drug transshipment points. Most chilling was the discovery of Phase 4, permanent integration, a 10-year plan to embed cartel-backed candidates into sheriff's offices, district attorney positions, and mayoral races across key logistics cities. The document outlined strategies for creating a shadow banking system using fraudulent nonprofits to launder billions into legitimate real estate and infrastructure development. Governor Hawkins and the Sinaloa cartel weren't just smuggling drugs. They were architecting a future where organized crime wasn't an enemy of the state, but a partner in governance. They were building the foundation for a narco-state within America's borders. They were designing a parallel government, one analyst observed, studying the strategic documents, not to replace the current system, but to control it from within. Justice and consequences. On September 15th, Patricia Hawkins stood in federal court in orange prison attire, facing 47 counts including treason, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, and racketeering. The evidence was overwhelming. Digital records, financial transactions, recorded communications, and testimony from co-conspirators seeking reduced sentences. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The cascade of justice was swift and comprehensive. 23 CBP officers, 15 35 years, 14 DEA agents, 25 45 years, 8 federal prosecutors, 30 50 years, 6 federal judges, 35 50 years, 11 state police officers, 18 40 years. Every sold badge was stripped. Every broken oath was punished. Every stolen dollar was seized. Operation Harbor Blast dismantled an $80 million criminal network and removed over 4,000 pounds of deadly narcotics from American streets. More importantly, It demonstrated that institutional corruption would face overwhelming federal response regardless of political rank or social position. The ongoing war. But as evidence was cataloged and sentences pronounced, investigators understood this was one battle in an endless war. Intelligence reports indicated cartel recruiters had shifted focus to smaller ports and rural border crossing, probing for new vulnerabilities in areas with reduced federal oversight. Somewhere in another state capital, another phone was ringing, another offer was being made, another price was being negotiated for another badge, another oath, another piece of American democracy. Power doesn't always require violence. Sometimes it only needs silence, ambition, and officials willing to sell their country for the right price. Every honest federal agent knows they're fighting not just cartels, but the possibility that their own colleagues might be working for the enemy. This story serves as a warning about institutional capture and a reminder that democracy's greatest threats often emerge from within. The cost isn't measured in seizures or arrests, but in families destroyed by fentanyl that should never have entered the country, neighborhoods poisoned by methamphetamine that corrupted officials allowed through, and the trust citizens lose when they discover their government has been compromised. If you're still watching, hit like so more people see this story. Comment exposed if corruption should be dragged into the light, regardless of rank or position. Share this video so people understand what's really happening inside our institutions. Subscribe to see what happens next in the war against institutional corruption. Because the cartels are still recruiting, the networks are still growing, and the next betrayal could be closer than you think.